Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Division I meeting. Glad to see all the smiling faces this morning. No, you're good. You're all good. It's all good. I want to welcome everybody. We've been a week off schedule thanks to the Tulsa convention, so everybody's here and got a good thing. Trapper, how many people we got signed in so far? 26 here. Don't know how many we've got all across the rest of our area here. 4. Okay, cool. All right. Welcome, Stephen, Don. Thank you guys for joining us on Zoom. See you later. Ed, good to see you over there as well. How are you healing up, Ed? You're muted. Hit your space bar.
Oh, had the first surgery. They're going back in Monday to redo it. So that's a sore subject.
Oh, gee, literally and figuratively.
Yes, sir.
Sorry for that, man.
Glad I could be here.
Good. I'm glad to have you, and hopefully you'll. What are you doing over here, dude?
Trying to get the pin off so you can see him.
There we go. Okay. All right. We want to send you good wishes for a speedy recovery.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Second go around. So yeah. All right. Was it a bilateral or just one?
No, just the one hip, but something's wrong with it. They got to take it apart and clean it out and antibiotic it and all that.
All right. Well, good luck with that.
Okay. Thank you.
Take care, man. See you later. All right. So keep Ed in your prayers and thoughts for hip recovery after that surgery. That's not fun. I don't know how many of you take the magazine from NMRA in hard copy. If you do, hopefully you read the president's message and you got the opportunity to see that D1 got mentioned a couple of times in the president's article.
Very favorable.
Very favorably. Thank you, Dick. I appreciate that. Yeah. Guys, we're fortunate that this division is as strong as it is, and it is pumping even better. I did not realize it until last month, but I will tell you that, and I would have never ever guessed these words would come out of my mouth, but here they are. Okay. Division I is now got a bigger membership than Division III, believe it or not. That's a big change, guys. That's a big change. Not by much, one person, but it's bigger. Okay, I'll take the win where I can get it. Okay, so we've got we added 14 members. For the membership drive we had at the Big Boy, and then during the Plano show we added 4 people. Division III added 4 people. We added a member for Division 5, and believe it or not, we signed up somebody at the Plano show for the Magnolia division of the Southeast region, which is Pat McCarthy's division over in Jackson, Mississippi. So go figure how that all worked out. So membership drives that we've had in the last couple of months have been fruitful, and that's what's pushed us beyond where we were membership wise. I did go back and look at our retention, and right now our retention is let me see, I'm going to phrase this. The organization as a whole is on a downturn. A lot of that's due to COVID and some inaction of some policies that were not received favorably with regard to youth and stuff like that, and that's changing. Come on in, guys, come on in. We've got plenty of chairs over here. If we don't, we've got more chairs coming up. Daryl's going to set you guys up. Welcome. Glad you're here. But overall, our membership in Division 1 is down by less than 1% in the last 5 years. And considering mortality and people moving away from the area, that's not bad, guys. That's really not bad. Okay. The national average is far different from that. So we're in pretty good shape. Speaking of membership, we've got several new faces here today. Can I see those hands of those who are attending their first meeting, please? Hey, welcome. Stand up. Please introduce yourself and tell us who you are and where you're from.
Yep, Donovan Pankey, from Southwest Arlington, right next to Mansfield. And this is my son Cameron.
Hey, Cameron, how you doing?
Welcome.
Good.
You like trains?
Mm-hmm.
You're in the right place. All right. Donovan, tell me a little bit about y'all's interest.
Well, I mean, I've just been, interested in model railroading since my dad got my first set at Loblolly 2 years old.
Okay.
And have just been playing around with, various configurations at home with what little space that I have, and now interested in kind of scaling it up a bit.
Cool. I think that I saw a blue box in your hand when you walked in the other day. Is that right?
That is correct. I did bring.
All right, cool. Then is it DC or DCC?
DCC.
So I don't know if you're aware, but this gentleman right here on the front, stand up, David Crumpton, please. David is the president of the Texas Western, where you're in right now. And that layout, have y'all met before?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So after the meeting, at every NMRA meeting, after the meeting, it's open run. So you can put that engine on the layout and run it around the layout, okay? Sound cool? All right, good deal. Glad to have you. My name's Mike Mackey. I'm the division director, and we're glad to have you here, guys. Welcome. Good job. You guys go ahead and sit down. I've embarrassed you enough. So, our meetings are typically the second Saturday of every month, right here. Everybody put that on your calendar. Welcome, Mr. Walters. Come on in. I should say doctor. I don't want to slight you, but I know you as Mike, so I'll leave it at that. All right. This month we got displaced by a week because of the Tulsa convention, the regional convention, which brings up the next thing. How many of you went to Tulsa? Raise your hands. Did you have a good time?
Yep.
Yes.
Would you go back again?
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was.
It was different since it was a joint convention.
Yeah, and we got to see clinicians who we don't normally see.
Yeah.
In our region, which was really really good. We had, as a matter of fact, the guy that writes the DCC column for Model Railroader, two clinics, and there was this fella from Rolla, Missouri. Yeah, he gave 2 clinics. He was marvelous, just incredible.
And the layouts?
Well.
Or did you go see in the
I've already
layouts?
seen all those layouts.
Oh, had you?
I've been
Okay.
up there enough. Yeah, I operated twice on 2 layouts. I've operated about 3 times on. So it's.
By the way, did you go to Steve Davis's?
Not this time. The layouts up there, there's 5 Class A layouts.
Which ones are you talking about? Ellers, Davis?
Yeah, the 2 I was on were great. I forget his names. But
Did you go to Steve Campbell's?
yes, Campbell's. Yeah.
Campbell's is really nice.
Yeah.
And
Another doctor.
yeah, and yeah.
And pilot.
He's Mr. Slow.
Yeah.
Oh, it's awful. I hate that. Anyway,
Well, I
it's a great
don't.
layout.
I don't. I liked it.
Do you?
Yeah.
He runs, all of his engines are on extreme high
Momentum.
momentum. And, if you're not careful, you're running trains off the.
And that's the way that they really run. So,
No, they don't.
Yeah, they do. Yeah. Having been in the cab, yes, they do. Okay.
Yeah, but you have a little more control. Anyway.
So.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great layout.
Great layout.
Operating concept is wonderful. The other guy I went to is a guy that was Brooklyn.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
He's got a,
Yeah, you had to go see that one, didn't you? Mr.
I-
New York Central.
I operated there, well, part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great layout. I mean, the operating concept there is
Cool. So the layouts are good. I will tell you this, for those who know Steve Davis, a tornado came through on Sunday night after we left and hit his house. It did not hit anything on the layout. I don't know which is better. Do you the roof on your house or the layout getting demolished? Because you can hire a new roofer, but you can't hire a bunch of people to come in and rebuild your layout. So you can take so everybody came through unscathed. There were no injuries, but yes, David.
Anybody ride the 7.5 gauge up there?
No.
I've been there.
Yeah. So anyway, if you've not attended a regional convention, I really urge you to make it next year down to Temple. That's where they're going to have the next one. So it's going to be a what I would call a convention light, if you will. It's going to be a shorter convention. The one in Tulsa was Wednesday through Sunday. I think the one in Temple is going to be just a Friday, Saturday kind of thing. So, but put it on your calendar. It's going to be next May, I believe, is when it is. I better zero it in because they've got me down doing a clinic for them. May 5 through 7. Thank you, Jeff.
I'm gonna say May 6th.
Achievement program. The division continues to make huge strides in the achievement program. If you're not part of the achievement program and are not participating in doing your paperwork and on your bills and stuff, guys, you're really missing out. It will make you a better modeler. You hear Dwayne preaching that all the time. At this time, I want to call Dave Crumpton up here. And Dave, well, let's do it out here. Dave is now receiving his certificate for Model Railroad Engineer Civil. So congratulations, sir.
Thank you, Mike.
You're very good. Thank you. You're welcome. How many does that give you? How many certificates does that give you?
This is my third.
I thought there were more than that over there.
Well, this is, I've got the
Golden Spike
the
over there
golden
too?
spike.
All right.
I'm just counting.
How's that progressing for you? And what can you tell about the achievement program since you started working on it?
Unsolicited testimonial here.
Well, that's just
But I already had it in my mind to talk about. I don't think that I started out thinking I want to be an MMR. And who knows what will happen. There's still a lot of water to flow under the bridge before you can earn an MMR. That's a pretty big deal. But what I have found is, as Mike and Dwayne have said many times, guys, you've done the work, just need to write it up. Well, as I started getting into it, I realized the paperwork is not as bad as what I thought. But that's the thing that always holds a lot of people back, is sitting down and taking the time to write it up. Once I started writing it up, I realized this is not that bad. The other thing I realized is it's not about just getting a certificate or setting a goal to be an MMR. It's what happens through each certificate. And that, to me, is the most important part. It's not the recognition or the possibility of someday being an MMR. It's the learning and the gaining of skill along the way. This certificate I'm really, really proud of because it took me out of my comfort zone. I had never built hand-laid track before, or turnouts or crossings, but I had to do it as part of this certificate. So now I can do that. I didn't think I would even want to do that. But now I not only enjoy it, I can do it, and I can contribute building things that we can use on this layout here in the club, because I've gained skill that I wouldn't have otherwise been able to have. So if you're sitting there thinking, do I really want to do this? Well, don't think of it as shooting toward an MMR. That may happen, that may not. But just work on a certificate that you want to work on so you can gain some knowledge, so you can improve your skills. And to me, that's the big payoff, is gaining knowledge and gaining skills. So what Mike and Dwayne say every month is true. You've probably done more work than you think you've done, and the process of learning is really a lot of fun, and it will make you a better modeler.
Thanks, David.
Yeah.
Those words ring true. Mr. Packer right here on the front row is one of, he's like MMR royalty, if you will, because there's less than, yeah, that's right, kiss the ring. There are less than 25 people in the world who have all 11 certificates. This man's got them. He's got all 11. That's a feat to be accomplished. Dwayne and I are getting close. I've got 9 out of the 11. I've got 2 more things to finish off, and I'm be done with mine. I'm sorry. Motive power. I'm building a critter, and then prototype modeler, and I'm building the depot in Tyler, Texas, and all the track work that goes around it. So those are the last 2. I was hoping to have the depot finished and turn it in for the Tulsa convention, but I just got too busy. My August and September were just flooded with work stuff. So
That doesn't matter. Be on the prototype. You've already got the structures.
no, I'm building the Tyler depot.
But you have structures.
I do have structures. Yes, I
So
do.
you're just building the depot for the prototype.
For the prototype model.
And that doesn't happen.
Correct. Now I will probably enter that building into the structures competition incidentally. Yeah. And go do that route. But I was fortunate at the contest room. By the way, don't be bashful about entering something in the contest room. We've got models. So Cole Rash, the new program manager for the division, he's got a bridge that he brought up here. Some of you saw it a couple of weeks ago or last meeting, whenever he brought it up. And Cole would have won bridges if he'd have put it up there. Nobody had a bridge. Now, I'm not saying he's going to win it by default, which he would have, but the bridge was that good. Okay, he would have won. This little car right here, okay, is a car. This is his build from the flat car clinic that we just completed. Okay, you want to come up and see this because it is top notch. Okay, this car would have done really well at the contest room. I was fortunate enough to enter 3 different categories at the contest room and walked away with 2 firsts and a second in 3 categories. So that works. Do not sell yourself short. I will tell you right now, looking across the room, I can see probably 5 or 6 faces that have at least 1 AP certificate already done. You just hadn't turned in the paperwork. Okay? You've already done it. I know you have. Okay? So I would urge you, just do the paperwork. Tom?
I resemble that.
Yeah, you do resemble that, Mark. Yeah, I could see the guilt look on your face. That's the reason I called you out. Okay? All right? So just turn in the paperwork. Okay? Let's see. Last Monday, we had the first leadership team meeting for the 23 convention. It was I thought, a very good meeting. We had people there via Zoom and in person in Grapevine. We're going to probably start having those meetings at least quarterly. The next one will probably be right after the first of the year, so we'll do that. But if you have not talked to Dennis Wright, Dennis, raise your hand. Dennis is our volunteer coordinator. Make sure your name is on the list if you want to help with the 23 convention in any capacity. If you have a layout that you would like to have considered to be on the layout tour, Mr. Packer, raise your hand. Talk to Jim Packer and or David Grind. Pardon me. David is working on the transportation committee. David Hager is working on the layout stuff. Sorry, too many Davids. I will also tell you that we have started getting Ken Kaiser. Raise your hand, Ken. Ken went to the SER convention in, where was it? Hickory? No, not Hickory. That was a narrow gauge. Where was the convention for this? Greenville. Okay. It's still in North Carolina. So South Carolina's Greenville. Hickory's in North Carolina. So yeah, exactly. I don't know those cities over in the Carolinas that well. Trust me. But he went over to Greenville, South Carolina, to the SER convention, the Southeast Region Convention, and signed up a list of probably 20, 25 names, 17 names of people that are ready to register for the convention as soon as we start registrations, which should be within the next 30 to 45 days for the 23 convention. At Tulsa, we passed around a sign-up sheet and got about the same. So that means that we've got instant dollars coming in for the coffers for the 23 convention, which means that the money that Division 1 has extended to the convention will be coming back and being reimbursed in a pretty short period of time. Hopefully before the first of the year, we'll have the money back in the division coffers. Yes, sir.
A shanty in O-scale, and it merited here. I took it down to SEC, and it won Best of Show for structures.
Congratulations, Ken. You did not tell me that. Wonderful. Congratulations. I wished I'd have known that. Thanks for sharing that. That's great. Great news. And I want to tell you something. That's an accomplishment, because the SER judges are known for being extremely harsh. So for you to have won Best of Show, that's a terrific accomplishment. I'm really proud for you. Let's see. New Braunfels Train Show is coming up 2 Saturdays from now, the last weekend of this month. If you've not been to the New Braunfels show, might be something to consider doing. Pretty nice little show. They had a show in April. I was down there on behalf of Polyprinter. I'll be going back down there on behalf of Polyprinter again. But they had, I want to say about 1,200 to 1,500 people at that show. It was their most attended show in history at that point in April. So now that people are starting to get back in the swing of going to train shows, I'll bet this one is going to be even better. So I would urge you to do that. Jim, I saw Jim Ogden down there. Jim's going to be giving us a presentation in a little while. It was a pretty good show in April. Yeah. For those of you who are not aware, the second Saturday of November is the DFW Interchange. If you have a layout, Houston, Dallas-Fort Worth, and Tulsa are on a round robin to have operating sessions for people who have operating layouts and run their railroads like operations. If you've got an operations themed layout and you can be a part of the interchange, okay? And what happens is every third year, people from the other 2 locations come to your location, and everybody operates on each other's layouts for the weekend. You'll operate Friday night, 2 times on Saturday, and once on Sunday. So 4 operating sessions over the weekend. Pretty good thing. That is coming up the second weekend of November. I might not be here the next meeting because it's in conflict, and my layout is supposed to be part of the operations group. So we'll see. I'll have probably Trapper or Dick Brannon stand in for me, or both, for the next meeting. Yes, sir.
Just an observation on that, probably one of the hardest achievement awards that I had to get was operation, chief dispatch.
Right.
Because I've never been into operations, and I'm a model builder.
Right.
And a layout builder. But in order to get all 11, I had to do that, and you have to get 50 hours of operating. And this week,
10 of it has to be.
this weekend, which I went to Houston and got
Mhm.
16 or 17 hours worth of my 50 on that one weekend.
Right.
Had a really great time too. So I would encourage anybody that is interested in getting the chief dispatcher to go to that, have a good time, and get a lot.
It's the fun one.
Get a lot of hours towards your 50 that you require.
It's the fun certificate. Okay? Because you get to play trains. That's the fun part. Okay? It's not the work part, it's the fun part. And if somebody is trying to get dispatcher and you need dispatching hours, contact me, because my layout is an operating layout. It's got dispatcher on it. So if you need some time on that, I know Trapper's working on his, and he's doing he's going to start doing some dispatching on my layout, things like that. So if you need that, let me know. I'll be happy to help you. Okay. Last year we had to cancel, but this year we're going full steam ahead with our Christmas party. I have booked the Forest Hill Civic Center, which is a quarter of a mile, half mile, it's 1 mile, one block that way, which is west. That way would be west. One exit, yeah, it's at Wichita. You'd exit Wichita and go south of 20. And it's going to be on the second Saturday of December. In lieu of this meeting, you will bring your significant other and families. Okay, that's fine. Bring whoever you want to. Everybody who comes should bring a wrapped gift. Male or female does not matter, because there are people who will team up to get whatever prize they want. So just enjoy and come and have a fun time. How many of you have attended our Christmas party, our division Christmas party before? Did you have a good time?
Yes.
All right.
What you're getting on the gift, what is the limit?
$25. $25 gift. Some people give more. It's not that hard to get a nice gift, especially if you go, I'll tell you a secret. Hobby Lobby always has really, really good stuff, and that's marked 50% off. So you can get a $50 gift for $25, and you are the shining star. Okay. It's we'll start arriving at 6. Dinner will be served at 7. It is a potluck. So you need to sign up and bring a dish or something associated with the meal, ice, cups, napkins, stuff like that. Now, Trapper is going to be handling the sign up on that. We've got an app that we've been using the last couple of years called Perfect Potluck. And what it is you just log into the internet. When you do, it comes up with a list of everybody. You just go to that website and put in and he'll send you a link to our particular page on Perfect Potluck. But you go in, you see our party, and you can sign up for an appetizer, a main dish, a side dish, a dessert, or peripherals, or stuff like plates and napkins and stuff like that. And everybody can sign up accordingly. So Trapper and I are going to start working on that this next week. And then you'll see that sign up sheet going out. Now, the division pays for ham and turkey. For those of you who've missed it, we'll have a Greenberg smoked turkey again. So that was always a big hit, and everybody who had that Greenberg's turkey thought it was really good. So we're going to go back to that route. But Trapper's also getting us a smoked ham from Coburn. So we'll have ham and turkey, and then we'll go with all the fixings on that. So put that Christmas party on your list. For the leadership team, in January, we are going to have our annual leadership dinner. It will be at Shady Oak Barbecue, and it will be I want to say 17th. David, what's the calendar look like? January?
15th is
And now it's
17th is Monday.
okay. It's a Thursday.
20 or 15?
Probably the 15th.
20 or
13th. Probably the 13th. That's when we'll have our leadership dinner. So if you hold a leadership role, David Hager, Cole Rash, Trapper, Dick Brannon, if you've got, and Mike Ross, David Crumpton, anybody that's got a leadership role, if you're in that position, then this dinner is to show some appreciation back from the division to you for your work throughout the year. Okay?
I'm showing that as the same day as the Interchange.
It's not on a Thursday. It's
Oh, I'm sorry.
on a Thursday.
What's
Okay.
the date again? Thursday, what, 13th?
I'm going to confirm that just to make sure. But and since we're talking about that and it's brought up, that would be along the same time as the Plano Train Show in January. So thinking about those things, we're talking about what our calendar looks like, filling up for next time frames. All right.
Where's that again?
Shady Oak Barbecue. Jim and David, y'all are, even though I didn't call you out a minute ago, you're invited again.
I was gonna show up.
Okay, you were going to show up anyway. That's,
I always do.
yeah. All right. Let's see. Show and tell. Who brought anything for show and tell? Anybody? Yes, sir. Mike Walter. Oh, cool. Cool. Well, did you, you built it in O-scale? Cool. Do you mind leaving it out so people can come up and see it?
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
Some things about it.
Mike Ross, did you bring yours? You brought something. What did you bring? Well, we're not going to do judging today because Dwayne's not here. I'm sorry. But bring it up here and so that people can see what you brought and for show and tell, okay? Tell us a little bit about what you did, Mike.
Anyway, I used actually a lot of my own parts because some of the wood wasn't adequate. But nevertheless, what is different about it is there are 2 layers of brass for a weight.
Inside.
Yep. So individual boards on the top and individual boards on the bottom to conceal the weight. The undercarriage is mostly brass because I just prefer to work in brass. But it's got some precision scale parts, precision scale coupler pocket. I did use the Delrin stirrups and some Rich Yoder trucks, but it's something I wouldn't have done on my own. But it was
It took you out of your comfort zone.
Well, I was comfortable with it. I'd done those things before, but never put it all together into a car like that.
Cool.
And I did learn how to stain with India ink.
Nice, awesome. And
So I'll put it back.
here's the challenge. I want you to put that in the contest room in Temple next year. Would you do that?
I will.
Okay, cool. Cool. All right.
Put it in the back.
All right. No, well, if you leave it up here, if you
leave
don't
it
mind.
here. Oh, that's
Okay.
fine.
Everybody just don't touch. Okay. That's the thing on these.
It's okay.
Look. Well, okay.
Just carefully.
Yeah, that's it. All right. And off we go. Mike, bring up your stuff.
Or a flat car as well, let me just do it.
Wow. That,
Because the flat car had already been done, and you need different types of cars, I put a tank on mine. I'm just gonna hook it to Mike Walter's thing here. Couplers match? Couplers match. And the thing about that one, that's a 2 truss rod car with brakes on only one end, so there's no brake cylinder underneath, but I've thought of this for a long time. You turn the brake wheel, all the piping's there, and the brake shoes will compress against the truck on that side. Not very well, because they don't hang down well, but it's there.
congratulations. Well done. Well done,
The
guys.
fact that it don't break just takes.
It's probably going to fail everything since the brakes don't work. Yeah. Congratulations, man. Well done. Well done. All right. Anybody else? Oh, okay. Who? Ed? Wait a minute. You're muted. You're muted. Hit your space bar.
Yeah, this really isn't a model, but I found something interesting. My girlfriend took me to get me out of the house to Michael's, and tacky glue, if you use it now, has got a new top. And one of the biggest problems with this glue is it's never where you need it, but now the thing sits, this sits in it's, and it's always ready for you. And it's on the new tacky glue. And the beauty is you can unscrew it when you're done and put it on your old tacky glue bottles.
Oh, cool. Cool. That is good. I always, to alleviate that problem until they come up with this, I always laid my glue bottle on the side. I never stand it up on its end. I lay it on the side. That way, whenever I get ready to use it, it's not as far to, you don't have to do it 180 degrees. You only do it 90 degrees to get the glue going. So this is a good answer. Thanks, Ed. Appreciate it. That's good. All right. And I see we've got some more people joining us. Thanks, Dean. Glad you're here. By the way, Dean, okay. Oh, we got a lot more folks there. Okay. And Jay Waters, I see Jay's there. Dean Ferris from Division 1, who lives up in Decatur. If you saw the Model Railroad Craftsman issue for September, is that right, Dean? September? You're muted, bud.
Yeah, it was October, actually, Mike.
October, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Dean was the featured layout in Model Railroad Craftsman. So that's another Division 1 member who's got their layout featured in a national magazine. So congratulations, Dean. Congratulations. That's really nice. and that's a picture from behind him is part of his layout there. That's great. It's all in scale, and the scenery on this is just extraordinary. We were talking about the AP program a little while ago. Dean's just you turned in what, electrical this week?
Yeah, electrical and author, because I now have 33 points from this article. So
Sweet. So how many certificates does that give you now, Dean?
that'll get me up to 4.
4 certificates. All right. That's all in the last year, right?
That's right. Yep. Last year.
Yeah. Now, granted, he's been doing the work for a while, but he's done the processing of the paperwork and turned it all in the last year. So great job. Good job. All right. Anybody else have anything for show and tell? Okay. Let's see here. Where are we? 10:38, right about where I wanted to be. I wanted to try to have all of our announcements done by 10:30. We're 8 minutes past. At this time, I'd like to call on Jim Ogden to come forward. Jim is one of our members who's got a lot of experience. He's done a lot of articles published for magazines all across, everything from the NRHS, National Railway Historical Society, to Model Railroader. In fact, I was talking to him. Come on up. It's all good. I was talking to him and didn't realize that I was telling him about a particular series that I read years and years and years ago about, move those trees out of the way. There you go. Don't want you to stumble over those. Years and years ago, there was a article series in Model Railroader called Pike-Sized Passenger Trains. And I remember that, and I was talking to him about that, and he goes, well, I wrote that article. I said, no way. He goes, yeah. He goes, that train that was in that, would you like for me to bring it to the next division meeting? And I said, absolutely. So we've got a lot of folks in Division 1 who are really, really good at what they do. And without further ado, I want to welcome Jim Ogden.
Well, glad to be with you all. I want to talk a little bit about some of the stuff that I've done. Of course, we're starting to have the train shows again. And so far, people are not having super spreader events from train shows, which is a good thing because we seem to be socially distancing. But one of the things I've often thought about was the fact that, a lot of cases will come up with equipment that is, maybe somebody's decided to change their modeling focus, or maybe it's an estate sale. I was up at a train show in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. I'm from an area just north of Monroe, Louisiana, and so I'm fairly close to Jackson, Mississippi, and Little Rock, Arkansas. So I was up there, and a friend of mine had a crate with a bunch of CB&T and Front Range and Concours cars that he'd gotten probably about 20 years ago. And I picked up a couple. And one of the things that I've actually been doing is picking up, say, the stuff that was out several years ago. And of course, the details were not that good. But I've been buying all these interesting little parts from places like, of course, this is my kind of goodie box. KD, got parts here from Tangent and other places like that. And it's pretty easy to graph these parts that are available now onto something that was around 20 years ago, and they'll compare pretty much to the current offerings that we have. But anyway, this friend of mine had these like 3 biker's boxes, Front Range and CB&T and other kinds of manufacturers' cars, and he said he had something like 2 for $5 a piece. So I went ahead and gave him a 20, picked up some cars. He said, "Tell you what, you give me $30, you can have the whole biker's box." So I actually reached in my pocket, got $30 out, and he said, "No, both of them." He said, "I got another one under the table." So I had the idea I'd take these things out and use them to practice on weathering, or maybe if there's some youngster trying to get into the hobby, it worked out to like $1 a car. Now I'm kind of like the cowboy who has the $50 horse with a $500 saddle on it when it's all said and done. But some of the body work was actually quite good. Now I had a PowerPoint talk over here, and I'm just wondering, it should be under
Bear with me here.
it's in a file that is model train or railroad PowerPoints. It's Silk Purse 2.
All right.
Well, I can jabber a little bit until you can find it there. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail because we've got another talk that's going on, and I will learn how to make loblolly pine trees because that's typical for the area I'm going to be modeling. But it'll be on that flash drive that I gave you there. But anyway, I picked up these cars and I said, okay, let me see, what can I do with this? And I said, can I use rattle can type painting? I mean, I'm a big airbrush aficionado.
Again?
It's under Railroad PowerPoints. Scroll down, Railroad PowerPoints, and let's look over Silk Purses and Sow's Ears 2. Go to the next one. There we go. And it should pull up there. But I'm going to go through things. The first part is history. I think we probably all know that. And I'm going to get down to the nitty gritty a little bit. See if it pulls up here. But I'm not going to read the entire PowerPoints. I'm a college professor, and if you want to put students to sleep, read a PowerPoint. I try to explain to my students, I said, if you've got a professor who's trying to read the PowerPoints, he or she was up all night working on grading or a research grant, because that's kind of fallback position. We assume you get to college, you can read. Although with the midterms I've been working on this last week, sometimes I wonder.
F5, that's what it's done.
Or maybe go to slideshow from up at the top. A slideshow from current slide. Just go from current slide. And from beginning, that'll work too. And it went away. Okay, there we go. Anyway, my thing was upgrading swap meet finds and the treasures. Now, I'm a advocate of when you can buy the stuff from the brick and mortar hobby shop, keep them in business. They are paying taxes, or a brick and mortar hobby shop that you have a relationship with. But a lot of cases, you'll have people who are changing their focus in modeling, and well, I don't really need this. I don't think I need all these particular cars. I'm never going to put it together. And you can actually find some treasures among the trash there. Let's go to the first slide here. All right, welcome to the slot meet. We've all seen these local train shows with damaged RTR, ready to run stuff. And a lot of the things we see are great bargains for someone getting the hobby. Now, who in here started out with Athearn Blue Box or equivalent? Yeah, kind of all of us, okay? And of course, I'm 60. I can remember putting together Silver Streak stuff and the smell of Walther's goo. I can recognize that smell probably at 500 paces. Okay, let's look at the next slide here. This is the first wave of plastic, 1955. Globe, a lot of the Athearn stuff is from before 1955, believe it or not. And Globe actually had kits, and they cut a lot of corners with things. These are some of the early players that we have here. I'm going to see if there's some way I can make the PowerPoint available for people online, to where if you want to download a copy, you can get that. Let's go to the next slide here.
We can certainly do that.
And second wave of plastic, 1980, got some neat stuff that had not been done before. Raymax had a center flow cement car, or double bay, and I suppose they have one around somewhere. McKean, ENB Valley, Eastern Car Works, Front Range, and subsequent Fred Becker companies. Some of y'all are kind of grinning because you know about all the subsequent Fred Becker companies. Fred Becker did a lot of dye work for other people. Let's move on to the next slide here. And I'm going to try, and of course, again, old Athearn Blue Boxes. Some of the things are good, some things are trash. Let's go to the next slide here. And one of the problems is with the older stuff, virtually all of them are going to have the brake gear upside down when it's supposed to be, because they don't know that engineering drawings for railroad equipment, as appear in the Car Builder Cyclopedia, are from the top down. It makes sense when you look at photographs of construction. And of course, I just how it's done, and I just basically took a razor blade and would cut things off and replace it with cow scale parts. Now, Globe cars, I mean, we're talking about Korean War era stuff. It was good for the time, but they cut corners in a lot of ways. The original Athearn gondola car is a Greenville gondola, just like Proto 2000 did, but in order to fit in the size box they had, they omitted a center panel. Let's go to the next slide there. AHM. Now, I'm going to show you some AHM cars in a couple of minutes here. AHM, Associated Hobby Manufacturers. Essentially, they'd go to wherever who would mold something cheapest for them. And they marketed a FlexiFlow and a helium car, which, from what I understand, the FlexiFlow, it does not stand up to the Rapido car that some people bought. And their problem that they didn't understand was, turns out the real cars had a different system of unloading the cars on either side. They were not mirror images. And a helium car, if you want the brass car from Pecos River, fine. There was actually a wood kit that was available through, I think, Ambroid many years ago, which kind of testy to put together. But as it came to pass, the AHM car was kind of fairly scale, and if you'd replace the underbody, you're okay with that. They also had a Pullman standard covered hopper, which is a higher capacity covered hopper, as would be used in usually cement service, or covered hoppers of that style were not really used in grain. So let's go to the next slide here. Something I am looking for with AHM is the 6-wheel truck flat car, which is about a 1954 Department of Defense car that everybody fights over those things. Concord, that was Jim Conway's company. Let's go to the next slide here. I'm going to get down to it. And again, what I'm thinking of mostly is kind of what we call the second wave from about 1980 or so. Yes. Okay. We had CB&T. Thought I had a question there, which I asked a modeler who is no longer with us, a dealer, a train show regular, what does CB&T stand for? And he said door prize. because it turned out the bodies were fine. I actually knew somebody who went and visited the fellow who had it, and he had about a 1 inch equals 1 foot dreadnought end. That I said, how on earth did this guy come up with that? And he said, well, they actually pantographed a real dreadnought end into a model, and this is about a third or fourth generation pantograph, and he used that to cut the dies. They did not use computerized tool cutting technology to cut the dies with that. So it turns out that bodies were actually pretty good. Now, some problems with that: the brake housing was oversized, and the ladders were terrible. I actually wound up getting some of the CB&T reefers, because one of the things we often noticed, I guess, back in the 80s and 90s is kind of rule of thumb is somebody's got to come up with a car, and they don't do a particularly good version of it, but it makes to where nobody else wants to do it. And that's the reason a lot of the manufacturers are somewhat secretive about what they've got in production. I mean, it's kind of like I've worked with some buddies on trying to bring some stuff in, and it's all on the QT about what we're working on. And turns out in about 1980, everybody came up with an RS3. You had Atlas, you had model die casting, and you wound up having Stewart, which is now Bowser, coming up with, and they were all in production at the same time. And people in the industry usually know what somebody's coming up with, and you don't want somebody, pulling all the air out of the room. But turns out a lot of these second wave cars, if you wind up coming with pieces and parts, and it does not matter to a tangent Ajax brake wheel or a Moloko extended copper pocket on a cushion underframe. It does not bother them that they're being put on something that was not really appropriate. So let's go to the next slide here. So again, separate ladders. Some modelers loved them, some hated them. I've got a car I pulled out yesterday afternoon, which is an old CB&T Santa Fe reefer, and one of the ladders is off, but since I replaced it with a Grant Line ladder, it's going to be pretty easy to find now. And then they retooled a lot of stuff with the cast iron ladders. Let's go to the next slide here. So then you got Front Range coming up with other cars, and of course I can make this available later. I don't want to read any more than I have to on this. I want to get down to the real meat of the discussion. Let's go to the next slide here. Let's go, and of course I already talked about the CB&T stuff. Now third wave, you got some really neat stuff. Bill Gould actually was doing tool cutting and came up with a Bucyrus Erie crane. And I've got about 3 of those things, and turns out all the parts go where they're supposed to. He did a USRA single sheath, outside braced boxcar, which is really quite good. I'd also gotten the stuff from Westerfield and resin. But these are really pretty good cars here. And I've done some military modeling. I like the way Hasegawa and Tamiya's stuff seem to always come together. Why can't we have this in model trains? And of course, he wound up selling his line to Doug Tishy. He did a USRA designed tank car, which immediately the reviewer said it was never built, and we use the term FUBI. I don't know if y'all are familiar with the term FUBI, meaning something's fake. A FUBI, by definition, is the product of a FUBAR, and I'm not going to explain what those actually mean. You can look it up on the internet. KD even got into the car manufacturing. Lifelike, after having bought the Barney stuff out of the 40s and 50s, decided it would be cool to get into serious model railroading. You got a lot of the proto cars. Let's go to the next slide here. Now we got a third wave going on now. And anyway, these are all these things. Let's go to the next slide here. And then let's keep on going on here. We may have a fourth wave that's going on now, which was branch line trains, now Atlas, tangent, Moloko, Rapido, Ariad scale trains. Now, what's making it kind of interesting is these manufacturers that are in, I guess we'll call it our fourth wave, what they're doing is they're actually making the parts available. And I'm sure the people at Moloko and Tangent think they've got some sort of mad monk that is living in Texas that's buying their parts. And I felt kind of apologetic until I found out about half dozen of my friends are doing the same thing. I even have one person who went into, that I know that went into Atlas and attempted to buy all the part sprues that they acquired when they took over Branch Line. And went up there was nothing left, and he's been sending out emails. Did you get it? No, I didn't get it. And somebody's got it and they're hoarding it. And I said, model railroaders hoarding? Oh, of course not. We don't ever do that stuff. You know, if I had 3 more trains, I'd be a hoarder. Anyway, let's go to the next slide here.
Just
So,
3?
I'm sorry?
Just 3?
Yeah, just 3 more, and then I can say I've got a problem here. My brothers were kidding about you've got everything. And I said, no, I can actually point you out to people who basically have storage units full of this stuff. I'm going to need it someday. I may need it. And I says, well, you know, set your sights realistically. Now, this is something that happened here. This is an old Tyco train set gondola. The weathering is a little bit overdone there. So I need, looking at it in the picture, I need to basically get bring some more black in and tone down the limestone ballast dust. Picked those up 25 years ago at the Plano show. And for about $1 a piece, and I went out and grabbed lunch with this gentleman who's no longer with us, who he was doing the same thing. He said, "What'd you get?" And he said, "We feel like we're kids doing Halloween. What'd you get in your sack here?" And we pulled it open. Both of us gotten about 5 or 6 of these Mantua Tyco gondolas, which were tight, and of course the rivets are a little bit larger, but not really objectionable. And of course, why were these things in the junk bins? Trucks were gone. Turns out the steps were broken off. Of course, we were replacing them anyway, so it wasn't that much of a problem. Let's go to the next slide. That is actually a kit from Sunshine Models, which was kind of the state of the art for the resin kits that you could put together. And details are much better. That's actually an earlier series. Let's go to the next slide. Now I want to show this little thing here. This is actually a old AHM. Let's see if I open up the right box here. This is an old AHM insulated boxcar. They've sold it as a reefer. Y'all are free to kind of look at my stuff in here. I like to have a lot of my models being layout quality models. I mean, y'all really know how to handle it. If we had somebody in here who had a beanie with a propeller on top and a ball peen hammer, obviously I wouldn't want them touching it. But don't laugh. If you've ever been members of model train clubs, sometimes people come in off the street and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what had just walked in the door here? But this was something that my friend Gene actually had 3 of these in a box here. And AHM, for whatever reason, back around 1966, 67, decided they wanted to do a Pullman standard boxcar. This thing actually had separate handrails on the side. And I'd gotten one, actually got a couple of them, and wound up thinking, what does this really work for? And then found out that this actually does have a prototype.
Yeah, turn the side, please, so that we can get close up.
Okay, where do you need to?
You're just like that.
Okay. Now I had to piece together the lettering from all sorts of different decal sets. NRBX is a New York Central subsidiary, and one of the projects I want to do, one of the projects that I really want to do is a grocery supply place, which you get all these insulated box cars with canned goods coming in. And every medium-sized town would have something like that. These would be road names. I was thinking, how did that get here? You know, like, what's that CNO insulated box car doing in here? And well, it came from turns out that their main distributor for green beans is actually somewhere in Virginia. So this actually cost me $1. Now, what do I have to do now? I'm going to actually take off the brake gear and put something more to scale. There's actually, turns out, Tangent sells Minor and Ajax and Universal or Eureka parts, and they can be grafted on quite easily. Now, I talked about the CB&T cars. Pull this little thing up over here. I really think Santa Fe probably would not allow something to get this filthy. But I kind of got to playing around with some. Turns out one of the things with CB&T is they were cast in the color they were supposed to be, which I don't like. It's not that much of a problem to paint it. So what I wound up doing is getting some Tamiya flat paint out of a rattle can, and wound up going ahead and oversprayed it, and then I actually got some thinned artist oils paints, and turns out it would not eat did not interact. It did not interact with or raise the plastic. But that's something I was always worried about. Do you destroy the plastic? But this was basically, the problem is the part screws that came with this car are, let's just say, forgettable. Yes. But, and this, of course, is probably more weathering than you need to have on the Santa Fe. And Andy Sprandio of Model Railroader was kidding me years back. He ran into me at the Houston meet of the NMRA, and I showed him some of these things, and he said, I think it was that meet. Or maybe it was one of the rail prototype modelers. He said, okay, you hold the world's record on getting these things. Everybody bought them, and they're providing insulation in somebody's basement right now because the parts just don't fit. But these are Grant Line ladders and other parts through such cute companies as CalScale. Now, speaking about AHM, this is an AHM Pullman standard covered hopper, as was typically used in fertilizer or sand. I got on a Wabash kick several years ago, and I'm primarily modeling Missouri Pacific and Texas Pacific. And when you have railroads that are bridge lines, one of the things you think about is who are your primary connections at your endpoints. And of course, if you've got a railroad that terminates in St. Louis or Kansas City, turns out the Mississippi River, for whatever reason, was a big determinant over are you an Eastern road or a Western road. Some roads like Union Pacific in the olden days did not go any further east than Kansas City. But you think who your primary connections, you may have friendly connections, you may have rivals. But Wabash, again, most of their covered hoppers were painted in black, and then around 1960 they got the idea of doing them gray. Mark Vaughn came up with some decals that were available for gray cars and had a listing of the maybe dozen or so that got this paint. So what did I do to it? Replace some of the details on the side with wire. Of course, it's got metal wheels on it now. I think I'm probably going to replace the trucks because the detail is not really what I'm looking for. This has I haven't attempted to weather this yet, but it will be getting all sorts of nasty stuff on roofs. Now, speaking about freight cars, the roofs, even on a freshly repainted car, may show signs of paint failure. This was also something that was out of the, go ahead and get these cars out of my sight. I don't want to see it anymore. This was done with a rattle can. Some of the front range cars that you'll see at these shows have, this is not a technical expression, but I'm calling it a drop sill. This was done because when they got to an 8-foot door, turns out people would be bringing forklift trucks in. And the problems with forklift trucks is they tend to be hard on the underframe. So they actually had some support here. This was done with a rattle can. I had this car that I said, okay, it's $1, cost me $1. Most of the details are the details that came in the kit. I did replace the brake gear on it, or the brake housing. I want to show some roof failure. And I'm going to go a little bit further with this. I'm going to actually get out the burnt umber and all the other things and really make it look nasty. Now, someone was asking me earlier about what is this little rust line on here and why is the lower half of the lower panels in this door painted a different color orange? Well, growing up in Louisiana where I did, the Illinois Central was always around. And Illinois Central, for whatever reason, they thought that, the split rail emblem was really, really great. This is from about 1967. It's supposed to represent a car I would have seen probably around 1980. With weathering, certain colors tend to show the weathering a lot more than others. Oranges tend to turn the color of orange sherbet. This Illinois Central orange, when fresh, is this bright orange. This was actually done with some Krylon paint. And again, this is supposed to represent somebody who got a little bit too exuberant with a forklift truck and damaged the door. I had a friend that was working on a loading dock a number of years ago, and his joke was you get extra points if you can destroy the door on a boxcar. If it's a gondola car, if you can get the gondola ends and make it part of the load of scrap that's inside there, you get a special award from the Forklift Operators of America, and you're enshrined in their Hall of Honor. And he said the worst problem though that they do run into, if you've got a car with a plug door, those are extremely fragile, and there have been people injured from the plug doors falling off. In fact, that's the reason there's usually stenciling. Do not operate car with doors open. I see there's a little bit of a, and of course, some of the rust spots that you see here are done with decals. Some are actually done with, and of course, I tried to use a rattle can just to prove I could do it. And some of these are, and I've been using a lot of the Tamiya paints, the Tamiya light gray primer. Then I put this is actually Krylon, I think popsicle orange of all things. And then I came up with a kind of an international orange that was here. This car also shows the ladders being cut down, which was generally what was done in 1967. Now, more stuff that was it was treasures at a railroad swap meet. This is something I'm working on. This was not. This is came from a McKean kit, and I was looking through an estate collection. Saw that the sticker on it was from Cook's Collector's Corner in Shreveport. Looked at the date it was put on the shelf, something like 5/84. So I said, okay, I was working there at that time. That's something I probably put on the shelf. What did I do to this car? Well, it turned out that I replaced the door with a door from Tangent, extended the door was not appropriate for this kind of car. And I did all these different modifications to it. And I said, this is great and good. And I said, wait a second, I've done so much that I'm going to have to strip the car and repaint it. And turned out the yellow paint was not that thick on it. This car has very delicate, very finely molded panel seams. So put yellow on. The problem is yellow, you don't get good coverage out of yellow paint. And I think you still ought to be able to see the panel seams. So what I did is I got some Prismacolor art pencils, sharpened them down, and kind of drew down to where the panel lines were in this car. And I haven't really given it the thing is, this is the other side I haven't done anything with. I look at that, it looks like a toy. And of course, I'm going to actually get a little bit of what I call grunge. Now, looking on the underside, I actually replaced the brake gear. This is actually the Hydro Cushion underframe part cut down from a Details West model here. And I'm going to be adding the brake rodding in. And this, yes.
One of the things that Jim just mentioned in passing that I thought I'd highlight for you guys is the fact that he talked about they cut the ladders down in 1967. What era you're modeling and what time frame you're modeling will have an impact on exactly what you do to the types of cars that he's picking up at these train shows and stuff like that, and the parts that you would put on them. Because you'll see that some of the cars have roof walks, some don't. Some of the cars have half-cut ladders, some don't. And it all depends on the timing of what the railroads were doing at the time because of rule changes, not using roof walks anymore versus ladders going all the way up to the roof, et cetera, et cetera. So I just thought I'd throw that out.
Oh, that is fine. And another fun thing you can do with a car, and again, these cars didn't really cost me a lot of money. One of the fun things that you can actually do is you can, if you've got a railroad that has, say, changed the paint on their cars, something I was looking at doing, and usually I try and find a photograph of the car because, you know, look what the prototype does, and you're probably going to be spot on. You try and imagine what it would be like. A lot of cases you're wrong, but the prototype provides ample examples of how it was really done. But if you say we're modeling, well, let's say Burlington. Okay, Burlington in the 1950s, most of their box cars were going to be painted in mineral red. Around 1968, 69, they started shifting over to Cascade Green because they were still trying to formalize things with what eventually became the Burlington Northern merger. So you could see the cut down ladders where they just, all right, this is the paint we're using. I believe Steele and I were talking about the different colors of red that the Katie used. I mean, it's kind of like in you'd have Katie boxcars with Doremus red around the ladders, around the doors, and of course, doors are very frequently damaged on a prototype boxcar. Now, what gets damaged on a refrigerator?
Like this?
Perfect. Yep, good example of Burlington. The idea was you put Northern underneath. Now, I didn't want to drop this thing here, but this is, just would love to mate up with that Frisco car there. Speaking of Frisco, I can't remember what the lineage of this thing is, but this, of course, has different style hatches on that. Something you'll often see on a car is the hatches or replacement hatches. I grew up around farms and agriculture, and I can guarantee you that they don't really take good care of the rail cars. And you'll have different colored hatches. You'll have replacements like, oh my gosh, this car showed up. Railroad says it was in perfect working order, but you received this thing, a roof hatch is gone. Turns out that's a little fiberglass part, and it's going to be something that was added on by, and of course, very, very quickly to put into service. Now, before I close, I know we've got a second seminar here, and I don't want to take up all the time here. These are some other cars that I had, and I wanted to show you what I typically will do with the underbody components. This is another front range car. And it turns out on the early run, this of course is a Missouri Pacific DF loader. I've been putting together a bunch of cars that have these loading devices called DF loaders, damage-free, dunnage-free. I've heard different terms for them. And there were different kinds of devices to keep the loads from shifting around and being damaged. And by putting a DF loader logo on top, what you're going to wind up doing is, the idea is it's a specially equipped car and you won't use it to haul something like the remnants of a reclaimed battery, or you're not going to use it to, the favorite thing that destroys a car for any further use is the hides from that are being from a meat packing plate en route to a tannery. So there's certain kind of loads, once you put it in a car, you pretty much ruin the car. But again, when you look at the front range cars, turns out this tooling was actually sold to Red Caboose probably had to be 15 years ago now. And Red Caboose tooled new ladders and a correct underbody that looks like what the prototype looks like. And these were available through Red Caboose and for a couple of years through Intermountain, who took over the Red Caboose line. And with everything moving to China, you can't get it anymore. So this underbody is typical of somebody that didn't know what the prototype looked like. But in prototype modeling circles, a lot of us just do what is what you're going to see in profile, because you're really not going to look at the car except like that. You can see the rotting. I need to add the hangers on that. Now, other thing I wanted to show you here is this is a car that I just stripped everything off the bottom, another front range car. This is a Missouri Pacific car that is actually had a plug door. Again, I'm kind of going great guns with the idea of a grocery supply place. Now, again, these are things, these cars, I probably spent about $1 for the car itself, and probably spent about $20 on parts and these sorts of things, which people say, man, shows you're nuttier than a 20-pound Christmas fruitcake. But a lot of these cars, things you can do is you can add on, as I destroy this one here. This, of course, is was from a front range kit. And this, of course, is KCS. And I'm still trying to figure out exactly who has a good molding of the Pullman standard style cushion underframe? When you look at cushion underframes that were added on, Hydra Cushion, that was built by a lab at Stanford, funded by Southern Pacific. It's going to have a distinctive cylinder underneath. I can probably talk about loading devices in a little bit more detail later. This is supposed to be a very general kind of talk here. You had Keystone, which you think, okay, that must be funded by the Pennsylvania. Actually, it's funded by Santa Fe, which I can't figure that one out. It was at the time, Pennsylvania really didn't have the money to spend on investments at that time, but Santa Fe was perfectly happy. You had Evans. You had 2 or 3 other kind of companies that were doing that. But the problem is, as boxcars became larger, you'd have the loads damaged. And of course, that's the biggest gripe, is the fact that everything you delivered in pieces, you tore it up, time to send it to the damaged freight sales place. But
Which is a freight claim.
yeah. And, that's something that obviously drove railroads crazy. Of course, now when you get stuff off a truck, you never know what they're going to do with it now. So now they tend to have a lot of the complaints. Now, this is another car that I did here. This was for Chicago and Eastern Illinois. And one of the things I like doing is I like having the reweigh data in a different color. And this is actually from a new molding from Red Caboose. So it turns out the underbody components are where they're supposed to be. So that was not one of my $1 cars. But again, one other little thing I wanted to show you out of this box here. Mantua Heavies. Mantua Heavies, their lineage actually traces back to Revell. I know most of us who've been alive for years assembled those Revell kits and had a lot of fun doing it. And, we got high as kites off the model airplane glue. And, Revell was just great and good and fun. Turns out Mantua Heavies, the family that owned Mantua back in the day, decided to get back in the model train business. And turns out the Revell tooling was available for the freight cars. They had a flat car. Turns out, I didn't do the research myself. The flat car, they had a gondola car. They had a stock car. I don't know about the lineage of the box car, but turns out the gondola car, which is what this is an Erie Railroad car. And Mantua Heavies, you had a great big weight inside there. It was actually met or exceeded the NMRA standard weight, but it actually did have a prototype. And of course, this does best with a load in it. But turns out they also had a stock car, which somebody finally found the tool cutter around and asked them what they did. And they said, whoever it was head of Revell, said, bring in this, we need to get a stock car because it's getting close to Christmas time. We got to get that available. All excited. I mean, they were talking about 1956 or so. Turned out there were drawings of a narrow gauge stock car, and they scaled it up to be standard gauge, but turned out they actually matched the dimensions very closely to things that were prototype. But a lot of these old dies, some cases they actually would, the old story is a blind squirrel sometimes gets a nut down now and then. But actually some of these things, they had no idea of making things scale, but you can do things with them. Some of the older models of tank cars, you can actually buy an underframe for a pre-1960s tank car and mount a tank that you found someplace else. And turns out a lot of the tank car models that were available and turned out in massive numbers. The tanks are okay, but the underframe looks like nothing that never really existed. And it was, Talgo type couplers and everything like that. But I've actually been able to purpose some of the tanks that I found. Another little thing that I want to bring to your attention, I did not have one with me, is the old timer tank car for model die casting around house. Turns out the tank is spot on. The underframe is somebody trying to make something heavy enough to keep the car on the tracks. You can actually get a resin casting for the correct underframe from that car, which is from about 1903. Of course, you got to put a lot of weight in the tank to keep it on the tracks, and I would actually go as far as putting metal trucks to keep their center of gravity down. I often wish that they'd make that little big center sill that the car had in something other than resin to where it actually adds some weight to the car. But in closing, again, a lot of things out there, you may think that they're junk, they're toys. This is an Athearn blue box open hypercar, also Wabash. Rick Rideout, Rick's Products, came out with side panels on the thing. This is a little bit larger than the USRA version. It's almost like they said, okay, USRA 1918, these are the standards. Let's come up with the newer, bigger 1925 version. These side panels were actually glued on. I did go to the trouble of replacing the grab irons and the steps, and I even really outdone myself even putting air hoses on the end here. But this was something that was, you know, Athearn blue box. Now, it was a later blue box. The rivets are very much to scale. Now, the problem is on the real car, you can actually see inside where these things, these panels open up. That was a way of increasing the amount of coal that you could actually handle. But again, a lot of these things just cost me $1. I may have spent $20 on parts putting in. And of course, one of my favorite things to do is to sit down on a day like this and watch football games. And by the way, you got to be very careful doing that, because you may get excited and spike something on the way to the refrigerator when you get too angry or excited about something going on. So that's as much as I kind of wanted to get into. I didn't want to really get into too much detail here. I've actually given the detailed talks before at different kinds of meetings, but I just trying to, you know, we tend to kind of be a little bit snobbish about some of the stuff that we see. But you can still get some of the, say, older models you may have. You may say, okay, this is an AHM helium car. I'll just, you know, replace the underframe, throw it away. This is a Concord Pullman standard 3-bay covered hopper. I can get that. I can make something with it. And again, if you want to practice on weathering or some other kind of off the wall thing you want to do, that's kind of the way to go here. This IC car that I did was something I said, this actually turned out better than this car right here actually turned out better than something. I said, okay, this is just an experiment to see if I can use a rattle can. Oh, this turned out great. I want to try this. That turned out great. And again, you know, trashed up the roof on it, just couldn't do it. I'm not even through with the roof here. It's gonna look terrible. I mean, Dwayne would have a fit when he sees what I do with the roof of this thing. So I think that's about it for me. And
do you mind leaving those open so that we can take a look at them?
No problem at all. I was actually going to move them elsewhere because I didn't want to interfere with the.
It's going to be fine because this will be gone in just a minute.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much, Jim. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you all. Let me get back here without tripping over the cables.
So before we take a little break here, a couple of things. Cole Rash is our new program manager for the division, and he has got some surveys here that he would like people to fill out regarding what types of topics that you'd like to see done for next year's clinics. So if you would, we're going to take these and pass them out and let everybody fill one out and then leave it back here on the table. Also, now is the time for pull out your red tickets. Pull out your red tickets. And we are going to have a drawing. All right, let's see here. Let me get this chair back out of the way. First ticket for today's winners. Now, everybody knows what we're doing is called deal or dud, okay? Do you get the deal or do you get the duds? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna draw a number. You get to pick your box here, 1, 2, or 3. And inside will be either a gift certificate to Discount Model Trains, or you get duds, milk duds. All right, so here we go. All right, first ticket, last 3 numbers, 991.
Bingo.
All right, come on up. How about you're the winner instead of bingo? All right. Which one would you like? 1, 2, or 3?
3.
Number 3. Oops. All right.
Sweet tooth anyway.
You got Milk Duds and a $5 gift certificate discount model trains. There you go. All right. Now, before you leave, you get to draw the next ticket. Congratulations, Doug.
Thank you.
All right. Next ticket number 988. All right. Come on up, Jim. Box number 1 or 2?
2.
Number 2. $15 gift certificate, discount model train. Whoop, don't go anywhere. You got to draw another ticket. Okay.
And the last 3 numbers are 989.
That is mine, but I lost it.
If you don't have it to prove it, I'm sorry. All right, we're going to draw another number. Thanks, sir. Appreciate it. Okay. 001. There it is, Cole Rash. All right. That's going to work out good because you're going to be up here to pass out the.
Wait a minute, I found mine.
You snooze, you lose, Trapper. $10 gift certificate, discount model train. All right. Now, we're going to take a 5-minute break. When you do, please come up here, get your form that Cole's going to hand you and pass out, fill it out, and hand it back to him. Thank you very much. We'll have a little break, and then we'll come back with Cole's clinic. Thank you. Come look. So next, as we resume our meeting today, our next clinic is from Cole Rash, by the way, who, if you've not turned in your form for the survey on clinics, please do so. We're going to try to do that, get everybody else up here. Hope everybody had a chance to, Stu. Stu just circled them all. That's great. So I hope you had a chance to look at some of the things that were up here during the break. Amazingly good models, terrifically good models. I mean, it's just fantastic. So now I'd like to turn it over to Cole Rash. I want to give you a little background on Cole. Cole is a taxidermist by trade. And what I've been able to find since Cole and I have become acquainted is the scenery techniques that taxidermists use and the scenery techniques that model railroaders use are entirely different. There are some similarities in certain cases, but when taxidermists do things on scenery, on their models, their mounts that they do, whether it's a fish, a bird, whatever, and they put landscaping or scenery in there, time is money to these guys. So they're trying to get museum quality results with a little time investment. So I would urge you to take a look at how he's doing, what he's doing, and try to incorporate some of those things because it can make the scenery on your layout jump to a whole nother level of professionalism, but also do it in a much quicker time frame than what you may have been accustomed to doing. So without further ado, Cole Rash.
Thank you, Mike. Thank y'all. So with the trees, these for foreground trees do take a bit more time. Roughly each tree takes about 3 hours. Where I start at is sitting on the couch watching TV, I'll start twisting up this wire that I get at Michael's in the floral section. It's the smallest gauge floral wire that they sell. I think it's 26. But I'll just twist up a bunch of limbs until this box is completely full of pieces like this, and just pull out roughly 2 arm lengths. Fold it till you get, you know, 4 strands basically. And you'll take it and just twist these ends together just so it doesn't come undone as you're working. And now you can double them more or however you feel, but once you get it started, you just basically cut it in half, pull it back in, and twist it some more. And you just keep halving and twisting until you get a whole bunch of little limbs popping out. So
Hold up on the ones that's finished.
and about
Hold up on the one that's finished.
Yeah.
We can
So-
see them.
you just keep twisting until it's this, and then you cut each individual loop and straighten them out with some pliers, and then you have 2 limbs on each side that you can then cut off, and then take a piece of dowel rod that I got at Home Depot, just in various sizes, and I'll whittle them down a little bit just so they're kind of irregular, not perfectly round, and they kind of taper to the point. Drill a hole on each end, one for the wire to shove into your scenery, and the other one to put a branch at the top.
Tree topper.
Now, David, you can take this and kind of pass it around so y'all can get a closer view of the limbs. And
You have another one you can start at the back or whatever?
I've got one that's
No, out of the box. Is there any in the box?
not that's already
Okay,
bent
gotcha.
like that. Next, once you get all the limbs cut off individually, and I take a little gel super glue sitting on a business card or something, and drill a hole in the boards, dip the limb in the glue, stick it in, hit it with accelerator so I don't have to hold it for 20 seconds, and it kicks it instantly to where you can put the limbs on a tree in no time. The twisting the limbs and doing the bark texture and the painting is what takes the longest part of doing these trees. Where this one's partially done, so where you can see where there's holes drilled for putting limbs in, and I just try to rotate 90 degrees roughly. As I'm placing the limb, I'll just start at the top, work my way down, and fill holes where I see them. And then
Word to the wise, when you're spraying that accelerator, don't spray it over your gel on your card,
yes,
okay?
yeah, and it
Because
takes
the accelerator will cause that gel to accelerate and set up also.
and I like the aerosol one because it seems to dry faster. It's from what you sprayed, so you can move on to the next one as opposed to the squirt bottle. With the aerosol, just a quick little blast, and that's all it takes. So you don't have to hold it. And so once I get to this stage, I mix up what I use for bark texture, which is this, and it's basically Elmer's glue and plaster, Paris, with sanded grout in a brown color, which I also use for dirt in scenery. So a 40-pound bag at Home Depot will probably go your entire layout. Mix that up together, and I'll squirt some brown paint in just so it gets darker, because that's when you mix it up without the paint, it's kind of a pasty brown. Anyway, so mix it up till it's kind of thick, and then you can take a brush and brush it on the limbs. And the main purpose when I started doing this was to cover the twist in the wire.
Armatures.
So the limbs. However, I've noticed I noticed when I added more grout to it, it got thicker and grittier, which also worked really good for bark texture. So I continue to do that and paint the entire tree. Next, I come in with some, I'll start with black just to darken certain areas and just kind of real random with the black, and dry brush black on there, so it gives it kind of shadows deep in the bark texture, because when you come back with a light gray and dry brush over that, then that's when the tree really starts coming alive as far as the bark texture.
Everybody take a look at the color of the bark on his tree. We as model railroaders typically want to have your trees brown. Tree trunks aren't brown. Go outside and look at any tree you see out there. You're going to find it's more gray than it is brown. I don't know why we do that, but we do. So go out and look at the colors that you're trying to mimic on your layout, and look at pine tree bark and everything else. When you stand back away from it 100 feet, it looks gray. It doesn't look brown. All right? Anyway, great job.
Yeah, and luckily, I live out in the country. I have probably 50 pine trees on my property. So I was able to hold these up. Yeah, that looks right. Looking at the real tree in the background. And I could mimic the shape and everything as I went, with cutting limbs shorter or longer, however I needed. But yes, the gray is definitely, unless they get real wet, then they start turning brown. So once I'm at this point, after the dry brushing of the paint, then it's putting the needles on. Now, for HO scale, I like the 6mm static grass in the spring. It gives it more of a bright, vibrant color for the needles. But in the Pico spring mix, there's still brown mixed into it. Because if you look at a pine tree, any time of the year, there's going to be some brown needles hanging out in that tree. So all I do is take a brush with Elmer's glue and brush it on. And then I use this tray and just tap it over the tray. And I don't use an applicator or anything, because while 6mm is twice the size of a pine needle in HO, my thought process is, by doing it this way, if needle falls halfway on the limb, then you've got 3mm on each side of the branch. So you don't have to worry about a static grass applicator. You can just pick up a clump of needles, dust it on, shake it, and rotate the tree as you do that. And just do it one limb at a time, or else the glue dries too fast. If you use like a spray adhesive, it will, there's no way to avoid getting the spray adhesive on the trunk and deep in the limbs where there's no needles on a real tree. So that's the only way I found to avoid that. I'm open to other ideas if somebody has them, but that's just what works for me.
So you do one branch at a time?
I do one branch at a time. The glue will want to beat up and try to drip. So just to work fast. No, I do not. Straight Elmer's glue. You could use Mod Podge. Also, works as a mild adhesive. But I've got a gallon of Elmer's glue, and it's like $14 at Walmart. So, yeah, Home Depot always has it. They don't. Mine does. Out
Home
in
Depot? Really?
Home Depot and Lowe's.
Cameron, would you bring your locomotive up here for a minute, please? I want to point out something here real quick, guys. Notice the size of these trees. And what brought this to my attention, go ahead and take it out of the box and just set it there on the table if you don't mind. Thank you. Now set it up on its wheels. There you go. All right. Now, Dave, you model an N scale, okay? And
People say they look like HO3.
that's exactly the point I was going to make, okay? Typically, the trees on our layout are too small overall. If you are out rail fanning, you've got pictures of locomotives, and the trees are huge compared to the top of the locomotive and the boxcars. Okay. And when we model them, typically our trees are like mesquite trees. Okay. They're short, squatty trees. So what you've done here, thank you, August. Appreciate you want to turn your sheet in. Oh, you're still working on it. So the point I want to make is, for an N-scale tree, this small Loblolly Pine right here is perfect for an N-scale tree. Yeah, for a big, tall tree.
Yeah, give or take. I don't go over 15 inches because I'm doing HO, and a 25-foot tree is HO scale, so I just or 15 roughly inches. But
let me have the tall one in your hand. Oh, okay. Now look at this for an O scale.
It'd be a nice medium.
That's a nice medium-sized tree in O scale. All right. But by the same token, you put this tree down by the HO scale or the HO locomotive, and it doesn't look that much out of size, especially if there's terrain that you're dealing with. So don't be bashful about using large trees on your layout. Okay, that's one of the things I wanted to point out. And what you're doing here is extraordinary. I think these are fantastic. I'll let you continue.
Thank you. So yeah, trees are roughly 3. I mean, how tall is an average locomotive? 15 max?
Well, it depends, but depends on locomotive, but probably no taller than 18 feet.
Okay.
On the rail.
18 feet versus 125 feet. So that's quite a big difference on most trees. And I mean, you'll find these all through East Texas, Mississippi, Louisiana, all through the South. So I guess they go as far as, I've seen some in Oklahoma and Missouri even.
Not many, but yeah, they can get up
find
there.
A couple, but
this is a loblolly pine is a long leaf pine tree, typical to the piney woods over in East Texas, but just like he said, through Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and the Florida Panhandle, through that belt right through there. Okay. But if you're modeling East Texas, this is your mainstay. This and hardwoods, oaks, and you get some elms, but mostly pine trees and oaks are over in that area.
And when you get into Louisiana, you got some cypress.
You get some cypress in Louisiana.
Which this same method could work. I would just add floral, like ground foam on top of it, because the needles aren't long. They're more like a fir.
Which is something else to talk about here, is underneath the tree. When you put it on your landscaping, get some of the brown.
I was going to go into that.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. So what he was saying under the tree is what I do is you can go to Home Depot and get a length of rope, and you can cut it down to 3 cents. Just yes. But you can cut it down to 1/4 of an inch pieces, and then just pull it all apart and put it in a jar and mix in some paint, like even cheap craft paint will work, but do it in kind of a reddish brown, almost rust color, and mix that up, let it dry, keep tossing it, and then you have a whole bunch of needles to lay on the bottom. Because from what I've seen in static grass, the brown doesn't have that red color you see underneath pine trees, and that's the cheapest and easiest way I can come up with to model.
Can I show another way?
Yeah, sure.
There is a like a little cedar tree that is used ornamentally. A lot of places use it in downtowns. Okay, I know downtown Dallas is covered with them. When I used to work in downtown, they used to be everywhere, and the branches fall off. Okay, it's that brownish, reddish brown color. Okay, you can find them ornamentally in a lot of parking lots and things like that. When you get them, they've got the branches that have fallen down, but they have the needles, and the needles are like a quarter of an inch long. Okay, you can take those and just rub them in your hand, kind of grind them up, and they become exactly what you're looking for, and you sprinkle them underneath the tree, you're done. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I agree with the prototypical trees. I would just add a suggestion. Make your own trees up. You know, make a tree like, well, I think a tree needs to look like that. Like, just an example, I took palm trees, I covered them with ground cover, and then I put blossoms all over them. They look fine. So I'm not saying that's your tree, but like the rest of model railroading, don't be afraid to try something.
Absolutely.
Just make it up.
Absolutely.
Your layout, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Daryl Cowles is a perfect example on this. Belinda, his wife, when she goes in, and I remember this story, okay? When she goes into a layout, the first thing she looks at is the trees and how much air you can see. Am I right, Daryl? Great, that's perfect.
What was the tree material that you put on the
The static grass, I use the Pico Spring in 6mm. Got where it was.
The ground
Yes,
cover.
so you could use that, or asparagus fern works good too.
Asparagus fern, yeah.
Dead asparagus fern. That also works. Also, Christmas coming up, I don't see why pine needles being from a live Christmas tree.
Get a live, that's right, Daryl.
One of the things, not necessarily for pine, but for this time of year, go out and gather you up a Walmart plastic bag full of these dried leaves that are falling off trees. Go to a garage sale and pick you up a cheap blender for a couple bucks.
Coffee grinder.
Yes, or a coffee grinder. And throw that in there with the blender. If you do it with the blender, put some water in it, and then put your limbs in it, and it will blend them up better. And then put them out on a screen to dry, and you just work them apart. But it gives you something to put under deciduous trees, like oaks, things of that nature. You can scatter some of those dead leaves under those, and that works real well for dead leaves under that.
Absolutely, and resist using the blender from your wife's kitchen. Okay. That's right. Yeah. Or buy her a new one, because she's got the divorce attorney on speed dial from Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe. Okay.
I think that's pretty much it. As far as once you get the needles on, that's it. The last step.
So when you're putting the needles on, are you starting from the bottom branches and dropping them from the top? Or are you working it from the
on everything I do, putting limbs on, doing the texture, the needles, I just start at the top, work my way down. Another thought there is at the bottom, I always make some smaller branches for the bottoms because they get less light as the tree grows. If you look at a pine tree, they do kind of almost bubble around and go back in, especially in dense forests when you go to East Texas. Or if you go through, was it the Davy Crockett National Forest?
Or the Big Thicket?
Yes. If you look up at those trees, you'll see several of these, and I may not put needles on some of them and just leave them dead, because you'll look up at those trees and 3 or 4 limbs up will be small, tiny limbs that just don't have anything on them. They didn't get enough light to keep growing.
And all the way through the tree.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't, I mean, not just underneath the bottom, but you may have dead limbs somewhere up in the tree. So don't be afraid to model that part of it as well. Give your tree some character.
Another thing about character too is you could take some of the dead needles you make or the brown static grass, whichever, and do one limb just in that brown or dead needles where, say, it got frostbitten, because after that last freeze we had on my property, I'll have a random limb here and there that's
Didn't
just
survive.
dead, that didn't survive. So I wouldn't do them on all the trees, but maybe like one on the layout or two, and just really space them out.
These are some of the best trees for pine trees that I think I've ever seen.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Absolutely.
That was, I wanted to model East Texas in spring and do the bluebonnets and wildflowers and everything, the dogwoods you see in bloom in East Texas.
Mike, you know what it reminds me of? If you looked at the bonsai trees on the side of the road that are actually living.
Yeah.
That could be a bonsai tree right
Yeah,
there.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, if you're doing it to living tree, you'd be bonsai again, but anyway, that's plant torture though.
Yeah, yeah.
But I've never seen the longleaf pine trees like we have in East Texas modeled and done decently. So I took a stab, and this is after 8 different tries to get a decent tree. So this is,
You gotta get them down to 10 minutes each.
yeah, because I need hundreds. But, and
That's a great tree.
it's,
Well, I was looking at it from a distance, and and I grew up in a place that's nothing but southern pine or logs, log. And I'm looking at a distance, and I said, "Oh my gosh, this looks real."
Yeah,
It does.
it really does. It really does. Outstanding job. Outstanding job.
thank you.
Daryl.
I was looking at them and I said, these are great, I said, we go to layouts, this is falling back in some of the Belinda territory, and you look at some of the trees and you go, no, not really. And we were talking about something in the far background where the furnace filter material or something may be useful, depending on what kind of trees it is.
Sure.
And I said, these would be great for foreground trees, and Cole said, I'm doing my whole railroad on these. I'm like,
Yeah.
fine.
Exactly.
So, it's a special illness, but it's.
Yeah. We got him out of the straitjacket today for just a little while to be able to give us this clinic. So
Cole, do you do deciduous trees very well?
Honestly, I haven't really attempted much. I've done just.
If you get good at that, maybe that's another clinic.
Yeah, that's where I was gonna go. I figure I need so many pine trees that I've just been trying to do all these, and then I'll go back and add some oaks. And
How many do you make?
right now, probably around 30.
Did you try sand mix as opposed to the grout mix?
I use the sanded grout.
Okay.
So it's got the sand.
I understand. You got some real fine sand at the house. You use that. Is that too grainy?
Grout.
No, you really could, especially mixing it with the paint, because you're just trying to get that rough texture. Yeah, and to make the paste, because the plaster kind of makes the paste with the glue instead of using water with plaster. And then so with the grout, you're really just adding the gritty texture to it.
So it doesn't matter the color of the grout,
No,
just the
it
texture.
really doesn't. I just use the brown just because I can also use it for dirt, and a big bag will last forever because it doesn't use that much. And when I mix it up in like one of those small bathroom paper cups. Just because by the time you get through brushing it on 3, maybe 4 trees, it will start drying on you.
Off topic, how do you use I've not had a lot of luck using grout as ground cover. Tell me how you do that.
I mix it 50-50 with baked dirt from outside. Like I've got red dirt that's real sandy at my property, so I pick up and sift that dirt and then mix it 50-50. I bake it and then mix it 50-50 with the grout.
Okay. And then how do you hear?
I brush on glue, Elmer's glue, and put it in a spray paint can lid with the stocking and sift over it. And then I come back with isopropyl alcohol and water and Mod Podge mixed together with a little bit of dish
Is
soap.
your water wet?
Yes.
One of the things I want to point out though, he's using organics. All right. Anytime you use natural organics for scenery, bake it first. Because if you don't, you may have sprouts on your layout. from seeds that weren't sterilized. Okay, so you don't want to start growing your own grass literally on your layout. So bake it first. It will sterilize the seeds and also kill critters that may be dormant in the dirt. So bake it in a Pyrex dish or something for 400 degrees for 45 minutes or an hour. Let it cool on its own, and then you're in better shape. Okay?
And when you're collecting dirt, just kind of off the top, don't dig down deep, because a lot of forbs especially won't grow until after they've been burned. The seeds won't even germinate till after they've been burned. That's why when you have wildfires, the first thing coming back are forbs. Broadleaf plants. So like broadleaf ground colors, duckweed, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
What we call weeds.
Bad stuff.
Yeah. But deer love them, so.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions or comments for Cole? Yes, sir. I'm sorry.
Yeah, another technique on that sanded grout, like for your trunk. You can lay your trunks down, sprinkle the grout over it, mist them with water, let them set just a little bit, and then come back over with a 50-50 white glue, and it'll stay right on there.
Yes. If I was just doing the trunks, but that wouldn't work for covering the twist and the wire, which is started as the main reason, and the trunks are the easiest part to cover.
Yeah.
So with taking out the twist and the wire, doing it with mixing it up and then brushing it on,
right.
That's easier.
Yeah. Well,
I would think.
Yeah. Jerry?
That wire armature you made up, what size wire is that made from?
26 gauge floral wire. That's fine.
And Hobby Lobby?
You can get it at Hobby Lobby, Michael's, and it typically comes in a roll like this, and you'll probably get, I don't know, 10 trees out of this one roll, because it's like 325 feet or something like that of wire, and it's like $4 for the roll.
Daryl.
One more demonstration of the twisting again, please.
Sure. While he's getting set up to do that, go ahead.
You guys can't do this now, but the Frisco turned over a hopper car of silica sand in Tower 55 years ago, and I got a big jar of the stuff. My point is, if you take sandblasting media, Mache or a couple others, you don't have to buy a 40-pound bag.
Right.
And play sand would even work in that aspect too, just to get the texture. I might sift it to get out any larger pieces with the fine kitchen sifter or something, but.
Thanks, Steele.
This one, for doing some smaller, I folded it over double what I did the other one. So there's 4 loops here.
Okay, so you start off with 4 wires?
No, 1 wire just stretched out.
Keep doubling it over.
Yes, I just keep folding it in half and twisted them together.
Okay.
So I have something to hold on to.
Turn sideways so that camera can see you a little bit. There you go.
And then I'll just start at the base, and I'll take 2 loops at a time, twist them together just to get the start of the branch. Now this is where I will cut to then glue into the wooden dowel. Each branch will have 4.
2 or 4. Yeah.
So, and then I'll split it in half again and twist each. So then after I do that, it'll have and you just keep doubling. And
So you're making the thicker part of the branch by doubling it over like that.
And then what you can do too, that I do on some of them is, so like this bigger loop on this one, I'm gonna twist it a bit to get the branch out away from the split. And then I'll take more, favor one side more, and then twist a smaller loop, and I can cut it into thirds instead of half. So there'll be like a spot where 3 branches came out of instead of 2. You'd be amazed at how fast you can do this. Just like take a week watching TV in the evenings, sitting on the couch, and yeah, once you start doing a couple, it goes pretty quick.
Did you ever try dipping?
No, I have not tried dipping it. I've read some posts where some people have done the dipping in wax for trees, and I've seen some really good results where they've gone back in and carved texture for bark. And for O scale, I might attempt that just to make it a bit more detailed. But my layout is in a shed. It has air conditioner and everything, but it's still Texas in a shed and it gets hot. So the wax would just start melting would be my fear.
Well, they make some paint that you can spray paint that and get a texture out of that.
Really? Well,
Rust-Oleum makes some.
I've used that on deer, not on.
Oh, dead ones.
Yeah.
Well,
I call it deer in a can because when we have a bald spot on a deer, you can spray it with that, and it brushes back out of the hair, and you just have where the skin was. It looks like hair from 5 feet away. David, and you can make these limbs longer, shorter, however you want. You just honestly I'll find that I'm sitting on the couch, I'll twist them all up one way one day, and the next day is completely different. I may take all these limbs and twist them together because I know I want to make a big tree, and I'll make a longer limb or more branches coming out of it. But the more random and different you can make them, the more realistic it looks for the finished product.
Well, I'm looking at those trees and thinking of the famous Howard Fog art beef that shows the Cottonville RS3s.
Yep.
And that was actually done as a promotional for Alco GE back in the 50s. And you see those Southern Pine back there. Of course,
Yep.
the thing is, it's, very distinctive. And of course, I would really think you need an RS3 as part of that.
Well, you don't have to go very far east till you start running into the Loblolly Pines. And Arkansas has a lot of them, and eastern Oklahoma has, they're up on that Arkansas line.
Used to be a lot of longleaf pine in East Texas.
Because I grew up in Mississippi, I see that one gray one. When you saw a gray like that, something was wrong with them. They were dying. They were shedding their resin and their bark too.
Well, there's a pine beetle that's probably what got them.
Now I've got this all twisted and it looks like a mess.
Okay. Yeah,
So it's just a bunch of loops. And what I'll do is I'll take each branch and just pull them forward to the end and fold them over and kind of get them all going to the front to where they look like this, all twisted up. And then I'll just kind of take a day and I'll go back through the box and I'll have another box and I'll cut all the loops and I'll sit down with some needle nose pliers and straighten each limb and just kind of adjusted the armatures till they fill up a kind of a lateral line, more or less. And once they get, I get them all spread out, something of this sort, that's when I'll come through and I'll cut all the loops, straighten them, bend up, decide which side I want to be the top or which side I want to be the bottom of the limb, and twist them up and then throw them in another box, cut them off, throw them in another box. That way I've got a whole bunch of limbs ready to go that then I'll get my dowel wood and pull them out and just start going.
Any other questions? All right, guys, 12/16. You guys have a great afternoon, a good weekend. We'll see you next month on our regular meeting. Thanks again to Jim and to Cole. Good job, guys.
Good job.